Airbus A320 on its way to Germany is descending toward the ground, but not near its destination. Instead, it is hundreds of kilometers away, over the Alps. The aircraft keeps getting closer and closer to the mountains below. And can the pilot still save the plane? This is the story of Germanwings, Flight 9525. It was the morning of March 24th, 2015. Germanwings. Flight 9525 was standing at the gate at Barcelona airport, preparing for a routine flight to Düsseldorf, Germany. For both pilots, this route is just a routine flight. The captain of the flight was Patrick Sondenheimer, a 34-year-old German with over 6,000 hours of flight experience, including nearly 4,000 on the Airbus A320. He was known by colleagues as calm, professional, and highly competent. He had flown for Lufthansa, Condor, and now Germanwings, a Lufthansa subsidiary. Sitting next to him was First Officer Andreas Günther Lubitz, a 27-year-old German with about 630 hours of total flight time, most of which were also on the A320. Lubitz had joined Lufthansa's flight school in 2008. The aircraft itself was a 24-year-old Airbus A320 with more than 58,000 hours of flight time. It was an older, well-used plane, but fully certified and regularly maintained. At the gate, passengers are boarding the plane, operated by Germanwings, a low-cost airline of the Lufthansa Group. The aircraft is prepared for a regular flight to Düsseldorf, Germany. Nothing unusual is reported at this time. Passengers enter the cabin, store their luggage, and take their seats. The cabin crew welcomes everyone on board and helps passengers find their places. Meanwhile, outside the aircraft, ground crews are loading baggage, checking fuel levels, and finishing the final inspections. Inside the cockpit, the two pilots begin their pre-flight setup. The Airbus A320 is a modern aircraft with a glass cockpit and advanced flight computers. The pilots power on the systems and begin programming the FMC, also known as the Flight Management Computer. The pilots complete the before-start checklist. Seatbelt signs are turned on. The cabin crew confirms that the cabin is secured. Air traffic control gives clearance for pushback. A pushback truck connects to the aircraft's nose gear. The pilots release the parking brake, and the aircraft is slowly pushed away from the gate. The pilot started the engines and carefully checked all the instruments in the cockpit. After receiving clearance from the control tower, they slowly began to taxi to the runway. The weather was clear, and everything seemed perfect for departure. During taxi, the pilots check flight controls, brakes, and flight instruments. The flaps are set for takeoff, and the flight plan is reviewed one last time. Everything appears normal. Once cleared by air traffic control, the aircraft lines up on the runway. At around 9 a.m. UTC, the plane began its takeoff run. The pilot set the engines to takeoff thrust, and the aircraft began to accelerate. The pilot gently pulls back on the side stick. The aircraft lifts off the ground and climbs into the sky. Landing gear is retracted. The aircraft follows its programmed departure path, guided by the flight management system. The aircraft continues climbing smoothly. Flaps are gradually retracted. The autopilot is engaged, and the aircraft follows the planned route toward cruising altitude. At this moment, the flight appears to be completely normal. Meanwhile, in the cabin, passengers were beginning to relax. Some were looking out of the windows at the view over Spain. Others were talking quietly with family members or listening to music. A group of students from Germany was on board, returning home from an exchange trip. Many passengers were likely expecting a normal, routine flight of about 2 hours. The aircraft continued climbing steadily through 20,000 feet and then 30,000 feet. Communication between the cockpit and air traffic control remained calm and professional. There were no signs of stress or technical issues. At approximately 38,000 feet, the aircraft reached its planned cruising altitude. Shortly after reaching cruising altitude, the captain decided to leave the cockpit to use the restroom. Seconds later, the autopilot was manually adjusted. The altitude setting was changed from 38,000 feet to just 100 feet. The plane initially starts to descend, but not near its destination. Instead, hundreds of kilometers away over the Mediterranean Sea. Air traffic control notices this and immediately asks why the plane is descending.
Germanwings Flight 9525, confirm altitude 38,000 feet.
No response. Inside the cabin, everything seemed calm at first. But Captain Sondenheimer returned from the lavatory and immediately realized something was wrong. The aircraft was descending fast. He tried to enter the cockpit the normal way. He pressed the hash key to request access, but a red light lit up, which meant that the cockpit door was manually locked from inside. The pilot also tried to enter the emergency access code, but this did not work because the co-pilot had set the cockpit door to lock. In this position, any access request from outside is denied, even if the correct emergency code is entered. He knocks on the door, harder and harder. Then he pounds on the reinforced cockpit door. He calls out again. No answer. The pilot sees the mountains beneath the plane and makes one last attempt to enter the cockpit. It is likely that the pilot realized this was not a technical failure, but a hijacking by the co-pilot. Fear and confusion filled the cabin, and suddenly panic broke out among the passengers. Inside the cockpit, Lubitz sat alone, silent, cold, and fully conscious. According to the cockpit voice recorder, he was breathing normally, calm, focused. At 9:40:42, the plane's ground proximity warning system, GPWS, began sounding in the cockpit.
Terrain ahead. Terrain ahead. Pull up. Terrain ahead. Pull up. Terrain ahead. Pull up. Terrain ahead. Pull up.
Still, no reaction from Lubitz. The plane was now flying below the mountain peaks in the French Alps, heading directly toward a granite wall. At 9:41:06 UTC, Germanwings Flight 9525 slammed into the mountainside at over 800 kilometers per hour. All 150 people on board lost their lives in the crash. There were no survivors. After the disaster, investigations revealed that the co-pilot had been struggling with severe depression and had deliberately caused the crash. The tragedy had a lasting impact on aviation worldwide. Airlines introduced stricter psychological evaluations and implemented the two-person cockpit rule, requiring at least 2 authorized crew members to be present in the cockpit at all times.